Icebergs are a type of image in which it includes information, theories, and facts about anything from most to least well known. I always wanted to do one for my favorite franchise, Captain Tsubasa. So without further ado, let's get into the Captain Tsubasa Definitive Iceberg. Captain Tsubasa is a manga created by Yoichi Takahashi which narrates the history of Osura Tsubasa, a boy who really likes football and the golden generation surrounding him. This manga began publishing in 1981 up to 2024, being one of the longest running manga in history with a total of 112 volumes, and also being one of the best-selling manga in history with over 90 million copies in circulation. This manga is divided in 7 different mangas. The original Captain Tsubasa, which contains the Kid's Dream, Boys Fight, and Junior Youth arcs, then World Youth, Road to 2002, Golden 23, In Calcio, and La Liga and Rising Sun. Although the manga ended serializing, the history continues in storyboard form called Captain Tsubasa Rising Sun Finals, and also in graphic novel form in the video game Captain Tsubasa Dream Team called Captain Tsubasa Next Dream. Captain Tsubasa has had a total of 5 main animes. The first one began in 1983 by Tsushida Production, running for 128 episodes, covering the first 2 arcs of the story. Then a series of 13 OVAs continuing the story was released called Shin Captain Tsubasa, covering the Junior Youth arc made by Studio Anime. Then, in 1994, a reboot was released called Captain Tsubasa J by Studio Comet. It ran for 47 episodes covering Kid's Dream and the first part of World Youth. And then another reboot was released in 2001 called Captain Tsubasa Road to 2002 by the studios Group Tag and Madhouse, running for 52 episodes covering all of the manga up to that point, although in a really fast-paced way. And then yet another reboot was released called Captain Tsubasa 2018, having 2 seasons. The first one covering Kid's Dream and Boys Fight, up to 52 episodes made by David Production, and then the second one covering Junior Youth, up to 39 episodes made by Studio Kai. Captain Tsubasa has had plenty of video games. At first they were developed by Tecmo like Captain Tsubasa 2 Super Striker, then Konami like Aratanaru Densetsu Jousho, Killab like Captain Tsubasa Dream Team, and Bandai Namco like Rise of New Champions, and also some other companies with other games. Some of these games are turn-based RPGs and some are just an arcade-type football game, although most of these games never left Japan. Captain Tsubasa has had a total of 5 movies. The first 4, made by Tsushida Production, follow the story of an alternative Japan feeling some kind of all-star teams. The first 2 of these movies, called Europa Daikeisen and Ayaushi Sen Nippon Jr., are against an European all-star team. Then another movie that's pretty much a recap from the series, called Asuni Mukate Hashire, and then another movie where Japan faces an American and South American all-star team, called Sekai Daikeisen Junior World Cup. It should be clear that all of these movies are not canon. There is also an additional movie by the JC staff called Saikyo no Teki Hollanda Youth, in which they adapt the Holland Youth one-shot. Captain Tsubasa has plenty of merchandise and goods, some official, some unofficial, ranging from shirts, hats, clocks, plushies, figures, football jerseys, etc. There have also been a lot of official collaborations with companies like Adidas, and even real-life clubs like Hamburg SV or Bayern Munich. The Captain Tsubasa anime has had plenty of names all over the world. In Europe, it was called Oliver and Benji or Oliver and Tom in France, where for example Tsubasa was called Oliver Atom, Kenzo was called Benji or Thomas Price, and Hyuga was called Mark Lenders. In the Latin Spanish dub called Supercampeones, most of these European names were kept, but some had the originals in mind like Steve Hyuga or Tom Misaki. Also, in this dub there are names based on the voice actors, like Richard Textes based on Ricardo Tejedo. There's also the Arabic dub called Captain Majid, where for example Tsubasa was called Majid and Hyuga was called Bassam. And there's also the Brazilian Portuguese dub, which they respect the characters' surnames, like Oliver Tsubasa, Carlos Misaki, and Benji Wakabayashi. There are many more names for the series, characters, and even the teams. In more recent years, since the video games Captain Tsubasa Gekito no Kiseki, Captain Tsubasa Dream Team, and the 2018 anime, the names of pretty much everything has been standardized to the original Japanese ones. Some of the characters in Captain Tsubasa are based on real-life players, like Juan Diaz based on Diego Armando Maradona or Karl-Heinz Schneider based on Karl-Heinz Rummenigge. There are also a lot of characters in Road to 2002 that are strictly based on real-life players with similar names, like Ribaul being based on Rivaldo. There are also theories that Tsubasa is based on Diego Armando Maradona for his playstyle, and Kazuyoshi Miura and Musashi Mizushima for their career in Brazilian football. During the 2016 Olympics ending ceremony, there was a video presenting the next Olympics in Tokyo. In this video, Captain Tsubasa appears twice. One of these apparitions is Tsubasa and Misaki doing a twin shot, and the other one is Tsubasa doing an overhead kick. Captain Tsubasa has inspired many generations of players, not only in Japan, but also all over the world. For example, Zinedine Zidane, Andrés Iniesta, Kylian Mbappé, Alessandro Del Piero, and even Lionel Messi. This is pretty much a meme in the Captain Tsubasa community. It began with the 1983 anime having the characters running for a long period of time with some flashbacks in between. All of this so that they don't catch up with the manga, making it seem that the film is longer than it should. In fact, someone calculated how long the pitches are in the 1983 anime, and the result was 18 kilometers. This was the first World Cup that Yoichi Takahashi has seen, where he fell in love with the sport, being pretty much the main inspiration for creating Captain Tsubasa. There is also the Sub-19 World Cup held coincidentally in Japan in 1979, where, in his words, the performance of Maradona and the Argentinian team inspired him to create the manga. The ending of the Road to 2002 anime was a supposed World Cup final between Japan and Brazil, where the episode ends at the kickoff, leaving the rest of the match left for interpretation. Many people thought that this was the ending of the series, but that's obviously not the case, as the manga continued and this World Cup match was completely fabricated for the anime, thus meaning it's not canon. There are 9 Captain Tsubasa bronze statues located in Yotsugi, Katsushika, Tokyo, the birthplace of Yoichi Takahashi. These statues are Tsubasa Ozora, Tsubasa performing a twin shot, Tsubasa and Roberto, Tsubasa performing a heel lift, Taro Misaki, Kenzo Wakabayashi, Sanae Nakazawa, Kojiro Hyuga, and Ryo Ishizaki. In 2018, the Yotsugi train station, the same town with the statues, was remodeled to promote the 2018 anime, including various pictures from the series. This station was also recently remodeled in 2023 for the second season of the anime. There's also a train station in Saitama that has a beautiful stained glass of the manga characters. There have been a lot of tifos and banners referencing Captain Tsubasa, not only in the J-League but all over the world. For example, in Paris Saint-Germain, Deportivo Pereira, and even the World Cup in 2018. Nankatsu Sport Club is a Japanese football club based in Katsushika, Tokyo. They currently play in the Kanto Soccer League Division 1, which is Japan's 5th division, part of the regional leagues. The club was originally called Tokiwa Club, but as soon as Yoichi Takahashi became the president, the club was renamed to Nankatsu SC in allusion to the team of the same name from the manga. There have been some characters officially registered in some clubs in collaboration with Captain Tsubasa. For example, Matsuyama is in Consadole Sapporo, Mitsui is on FC Tokyo, Kojiro Hyuga is in Juventus, and Tsubasa Osora is in Barcelona. There have been countless of people trying to do Captain Tsubasa techniques. Some of these techniques can be performed in real life, such as the drive shot or the kamisori shot, while others like the twin shot and the kickback cannon are a lot more complicated to pull off. But some J-League players actually dedicated a video performing all of the techniques already mentioned, which you are seeing right now. Pachinkos are mechanical games originating in Japan that are used as an arcade game and much more frequently for gambling. There have been 3 Captain Tsubasa Pachinkos developed by Sansei that are mainly well known for having really beautiful 3D animations. The first one is based on the Boys Fight and Junior Youth arc, the second one is Rising Sun, and the last one is Japan vs an all-star team. As a fun fact, there's also one pachinko that has a 2D outro, although the studio that produced said animation is unknown. Yuto Nagatomo, a real-life player, appeared in a 2019 special to promote the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. In this special, Nagatomo is playing with Tsubasa and company against an alternative Brazil. As a fun fact, in this special we can see Kira as the coach, which is an ode to the Rising Sun arc. There have been countless of art exhibitions regarding Captain Tsubasa, in which you can see the art that Takahashi makes for the manga. There are also some reproductions of things like Wakabayashi's hat, Kira's black ball, Matsuyama's hachimaki, Sanae's flag, football jerseys, Misaki's farewell ball, etc. There are many Captain Tsubasa characters who have a special physical trait, like Nita's Fang, missing in the 1983 anime, Muller's car, missing in the 2018 anime, Cal's toothpick, Chito and Hyuga with roll-up sleeves, though this is illegal in real football, Aoi's untucked shirt, Ino's piercing, etc. There have been various special mangas about Captain Tsubasa mainly to promote some events. There are some that are canon like Wish for Peace in Hiroshima and some that are not canon. Most of these special mangas tell a story about Japan facing an all-star international team, or an Argentina led by Maradona, or even a manga about Barcelona against Júbilo Iwata. There's also a special manga called Endless Dream, telling the story of Tsubasa shortly after the elementary school tournament, where they organize a match to cheer him up because of Roberto's departure. Although the canonicity of this one is still debated, because Misaki makes an apparition and that will cause problems in the timeline. There's also the special manga called Captain Tsubasa Memories that tell the story before the beginning of the manga. There was a theory regarding Morisaki's elementary school team, which at the time wasn't confirmed that he was at Shutetsu. This theory gains more credibility in the animes where Morisaki doesn't appear as a substitute keeper for Wakabayashi. Because of this, many people theorize that Morisaki is from Yamabuki School with Kishida, mainly because they played together at Shimizu Sepulse. But this was reconfirmed in the manga Captain Tsubasa Memories, which confirms that Morisaki is 100% from Shutetsu. Being a factor for the development of football in Japan, Captain Tsubasa is an obvious choice for sports brand advertisement, like Kirin Nuda, a sports drink, and even Adidas, where they promote the real Japanese team. Captain Tsubasa even had a commercial for Toyota, promoting the Toyota Tobira. There are a lot of pieces of media that inspired Takahashi to become a manga artist, such as works from the legendary Osamu Tezuka, the manga Kyojin no Hoshi, the manga Ashita no Joe, the manga Dokaben, etc. There exists a Captain Tsubasa cafe located in Yokohama, Japan, where you can order things like the Nankatsu sandwich, the Tsubasa, Misaki or Wakabayashi burger, and some other things. You can see the menu, although it's kinda blurry. There exists a pilot manga of Captain Tsubasa with the same name released in 1980, a year before its official serialization. This one-shot tells the story of Taro Tsubasa, a boy that, unlike the Tsubasa we all know, is not actually a prodigy in football, and struggles facing his main rival, star keeper Kenzo Wakabayashi. As you can tell, the manga has a lot of difference from the main one, like Osura Tsubasa being called Taro Tsubasa or Wakabayashi and Tsubasa being in a love triangle for a girl named Yaki Yamasaki. There are some characters that have two names, like for example Gino Hernandez is sometimes called Zino Hernandez. This may be because there was a wrestler called Gino Hernandez and Shueisha wanted to avoid copyright. This may be true, although there is the case of Carlos Santana who has the same name as a Mexican guitarist and nothing happened, but whatever. There is also the case of Brian, whose surname, due to Japanese phonetics, can be read both as Cryford or Clyford. The surname Cryford is mostly utilized in non-official translations of the manga, but the surname Clyford is utilized as its official name. And there's the case of Xiao Chungyuan, who is also known as Shoshunko. This is due to how Japanese and Chinese people read kanji. The character's name kanji is this. Read in Japanese is Shoshunko, but read in Chinese is Xiao Chungyuan. And the same goes for the rest of the Chinese characters, where the non-official translations utilize their Japanese names, while the official ones use the Chinese names, although we don't know if this was Takahashi's intention. There's also the case of Takashi Sugimoto, who, during the Real Japan 7 arc, utilizes the fake name of Koji Yoshikawa. Apparently, this is a reference to a comedian called Sanma Akashiya, whose real name is Takafumi Sugimoto. This is an old urban legend that says that everything in Captain Tsubasa was a dream, and Tsubasa wakes up without legs. Why without legs? That's because he lost them in the accident that he had when he was a toddler. I mean the scene where a truck hits him and the ball saves him. In this story, the ball doesn't save him and he breaks both of his legs. This theory was super popular back in the day, maybe because pretty much all of the Captain Tsubasa animes up to that point had an open ending. So many fans believed that this was the real ending of the series, but was censored due to being very sad. Nowadays, we know that this is obviously fake, as the series is still running, but there were a lot of people that genuinely believed it, even to the extent of asking Takahashi himself about it. Although that's like asking Akira Toriyama if Dragon Ball AF is canon, but whatever. As a fun fact, Once Caldas, Deportivo Pereira's rival, same team that had the Tifo that we saw earlier, raised a banner of Tsubasa without legs, and the banner said Tu sueño mi historia, which translates to Your dream, my history, which is pretty funny if you ask me. Many fans pushed for Osura Tsubasa to become the mascot of the World Cup held in Japan and Korea in 2002. Finally, FIFA did not pick him, using instead the original mascot designs called Ato, Kaz, and Nick. During the 1983 anime, there was a filler arc created so they didn't catch up to the manga. placed right before the match against Toho. This filler is a hypothetical tournament between Japan and some European nations. In these European nations we can see characters like Karl-Heinz Schneider and Elsie Björk, although with different designs and personalities. These characters actually predate their apparition from the manga, thus being beta versions. There's also a beta version of Carlos Santana in one of the movies, which also predates his World Youth apparition. It's most likely that Takahashi was the one behind the concept and names of these characters. There are inconsistencies between the hair color of certain characters from the manga to the games or anime. For example, in Shin Captain Tsubasa and in J, we can see Gino Hernandez have dark brown hair, but in the manga and in more recent animes he appears with blonde hair. Another example would be Mueller, who in the manga has blonde hair but in the animes and games he has brown hair. Why is this? This may be due to misinterpretation of Takahashi's gray coloring in the manga. Fully blonde characters in manga are usually drawn with white hair, like Schneider or Levin. For darker colors they use gray. But for some reason Takahashi uses gray for drawing blonde characters too. This is where the misinterpretation happens, because gray colors are typically used for darker hair colors. Throughout the manga, we have been shown that Hyuga really likes Coca-Cola. Even in the anime they have shown Hyuga drinking it, and even when he was confronted by Maki about drinking solely carbonated drinks. The question is that many people have theorized that this addiction could be one of the reasons that he didn't have a proper body condition to play for Juventus. In episode 35 of Captain Tsubasa J, Aoi Shingo arrives to an Italian airport, where at the same time Italy's team arrive. Aoi kicks a ball towards the crowd, which is stopped by none other than Roberto Baggio, the famous Italian player. This is pretty much the only strict apparition of a real-life player in a Captain Tsubasa anime, not counting the Nagatomo special or the 2018 Seasons 2 openings. There have been a lot of Captain Tsubasa references in other media. For example, in Yu Yu Hakusho, the main character, Urameshi Yusuke, is seen sacrificing himself to save the life of a young boy who was going to get hit by a car. The boy was also playing with a ball. We'll learn later that Yusuke sacrificing himself for nothing because the boy was going to get hit, but the ball miraculously saved him. Pretty much a reference to the beginning of Captain Tsubasa. There's also a reference in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5 manga, where a character named Guido Mista turns on a TV inside of Coco Jumbo and the TV shows Captain Tsubasa, with even the character mentioned in the anime. Apparently, this reference is due to Hirohiko Araki, JoJo's mangaka, seeing Captain Tsubasa on the TV in Italy. Also, there's another reference in the Haikyuu manga where some twins say that they can replicate the Skylab Hurricane. Then there's a reference in the Jujutsu Kaisen anime where they mimic the opening of the 1983 series. There's also a reference in the video game Cyberpunk 2077 where quite early in the main story, the main character, for the need of a mission, will be given a fake identity. Harry Cromwell, his partner, will also have a fake identity, called Ramon Victorino, and we need to meet someone named Hajime Taki. I'll stop here for the sake of the video, but feel free to add some more references in the comments. Millennium Dream is a special manga released in the year 2000 that seems to be a game simulation between Brazil and Japan, where Tsubasa, Hyuga, Aoi and Wakabayashi are playing the Olympics final with some real-life players. This special manga stood up from the rest because it contains quote-unquote spoilers for, at the time, upcoming arcs of Captain Tsubasa, I mean the Olympics and the Champions League, where we can see things like Hyuga returning to Juventus, Wakabayashi going to Bayern, and Misaki going to PSG. We can also see Tsubasa and Sanae's kids. This manga also has the apparition of Xiao, who temporarily cures Tsubasa's injuries with acupuncture, which is theorized to happen in Rising Sun. For the 2019 Club World Cup held in Qatar, Adidas created a ball named Tsubasa, a ball which design is based on manga panels. If it isn't obvious to see the reference, years later they used the same ball in the J-League and the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, but with a picture of Tsubasa and a girl named Kaede, character which is from a light novel created by Yoichi Takahashi. Have you ever noticed that Jito says at the end of every sentence? This is due to an untranslatable joke from the manga. The thing is that people from Nagasaki, which is where Jito lives, have a dialect in which some sentences end with the suffix tai. The joke is that Jito pretty much does it all the time. There have been various characters that according to fans have been nerfed. For example, Stefan Levin, Carlos Santana, and the most well-known, Salinas, the Brazilian goalkeeper that, due to the arduous training from Roberto and Santana with a skywind shot, could easily catch Hyuga's ratio shot, a shot that, at the time, hasn't been catched by anyone. But then later in Racing Sun, you can see that Salinas can catch almost anything, and not only that, he doesn't seem to appear anywhere in Next Dream. This is a rather scandalous theory that says that Tsubasa's mom cheats on his husband with Roberto. This theory has its basis in the fact that Tsubasa's mom is always alone, because Tsubasa's father is a sea captain and is always away from home. So in this theory, Tsubasa's mom has affairs with Roberto during the elementary school arc. A rather weird theory if you ask me. There have been various lesser-known players in Captain Tsubasa. Some of these don't even have names, such is the case of America's captain, Colombia's captain, Ghana's captain, etc. There are also players with little relevance like Zangief from Uzbekistan, Raymond Chandler from Cameroon, or even Calles from Greece, player that is tied with Schneider as the player with most scored goals in the Bundesliga. For Japanese little relevance players, we can look at Toshiya Okano from Real Japan 7, who apparently plays in Urawa Red Diamonds, although we don't see him in Road to 2002. There's also the players for Japan's Sub-20 team that Takeshi leads in Golden 23. During the manga, Takahashi has created various clubs that don't exist in real life, such as Bara FC, Brazilian club where Carlos Santana, before called Carlos Bara, played, or Bolanos FC, club from the Argentinian second division where Gakuto Igawa played. There's also the case of the club where Ryoma Hino played before joining Real Japan 7, club that in the manga was called Montevideo FC, but since there are a lot of clubs in Montevideo, we don't know if this club is fictional or not. In fact, some fans theorize that it could be Montevideo Wanderers. It is unknown why Takahashi created these clubs, although the case of Bara FC makes sense since it will generate bad publicity to a famous club. Takahashi was creator of various pieces of media, not only manga, but even light novels or animes. The most well-known work of Takahashi apart from Captain Tsubasa is called Hungry Heart Wild Striker, a manga that received an anime adaptation. Then there's also the light novel called Golden Kills that also had an anime adaptation, although this adaptation is lost media. Another light novel would be the already mentioned Soccer Shoujo Kaede. Then some football mangas like Pride or Striker Gym, and some mangas that are not about football like The Legend of Sho and Ace. He also directed an anime special in collaboration with the Paralympic Games in which they play blind football. As you can already tell, Takahashi never moves from the sports genre. There have been various card games related to the franchise, some official, some not, like for example a card game promoted by the J-League or a card game based on the 2018 anime. There's also a non-official card game called Captain Tsubasa All-Star Game, although to be honest I couldn't find how any of these games are meant to be played. so if you know, leave it in the comments. In the Captain Tsubasa animes, there have been various forms of filler. The most well-known ones are from the 1983 series that has filler like Tsubasa meeting Sanae and some Nankatsu guys before it actually happens, Hyuga's childhood and how his father dies, Misugi being operated to fix his heart disease, episode summaries, and the already mentioned international tournament that has Beta Schneider and Pierre. In Shin Captain Tsubasa there's actually not much filler, but they got some characters' backstory and a lot of other stuff. In Captain Tsubasa J, the majority of the filler is the story of Roberto's mother or the story of Misaki trying to leave his father because he didn't want to move, or giving Furano a little bit more depth with a player named Nakagawa and Furano's coach dying after the Furano vs Meiwa match. In Road 2002 there isn't much filler. In fact, they got things from the manga like Diaz Maradona style goal. Also in this adaptation they changed the personalities of the characters like Diaz being more arrogant or Pierre being more quote-unquote elegant. And in the 2018 series the filler is almost non-existent, with the exception of maybe the second season having a little bit more depth in the Japan vs Bayern match, and maybe some of the encounters of Sanae and Kanda that should have happened in the first season but due to time constraints they were cut. In the video games and anime of Captain Tsubasa, a phenomenon called whitewashing occurs, which is basically turning a dark-skinned character and making them more light-skinned. Some examples of this is Carlos Santana, Natureza, and Ramon Victorino. A complete opposite of this happens with characters like Roberto Ongo and Juan Diaz, whose skin tone is canonically lighter, but in some of the animes and video games, they are shown with more dark skin tones. Takahashi has been accused of something called same-face syndrome, which is basically when an artist draws various characters with the same face. It is pretty evident that this is the case in Captain Tsubasa, mainly because the characters have indeed similar faces, like for example Matsuyama, Misaki, Misugi and Sorimachi being almost identical. In the animes, they sometimes start to fix this changing the way the head, eyes or nose are drawn, or by simply changing the colors of the eyes and hair. Abdulrahman Shuaib is an animator from Kuwait that is pretty well known for making Captain Tsubasa animations, most notably animating the World Youth part of the story as a supposed continuation of Captain Tsubasa J. Recently, he's been more focused on animating various matches from the Rising Sun arc, so stay tuned. The famous mobile game Captain Tsubasa Dream Team has an interesting exclusive version only for mainline China. This version is not controlled by Keylab, but rather a company called Beijing Gaia Interactive Entertainment. Previously, it was known for being a supposed better version of the game, mainly because it had a PT system in which you can have medals that can redeem banner exclusive players, mechanic that wasn't at the time in the original game, and also replacing the official uniforms with the manga versions. Nowadays, it's known for the complete opposite, mainly because it has players with the official kits for some clubs, such is the case of Schneider with his Hamburg uniform or Ino with his Napoli uniform. It is unknown if these versions are officially licensed or not. You know, one detail that I always liked about the Captain Tsubasa manga is how the international players only understand the language they already know. For example, Genso fills the role of a translator between German and Japanese characters, or Tsubasa talking to Diaz in Portuguese because Spanish and Portuguese are pretty similar, or Xiao talking in Chinese with Aoi and Tamotsu and them not understanding him. Sadly, later in the manga it seems that this is not respected as much. This is also omitted in various animes, although it is understandable because it could be difficult for a voice actor to talk a language they don't know. For a long period of time, the Captain Tsubasa manga has been only exclusively on Japan, probably because of copyright issues with gloves and sports brands that appear throughout the manga without their permission, although this is technically fair use, but whatever. Because of this, the Captain Tsubasa manga arrived kinda late to the other side of the world, for example in China, Germany, France, Argentina, etc. Now the manga is available in most parts of the world, although for most countries only the original one, because Shueisha is apparently scared of releasing the rest due to copyright issues. Although in China they actually reached up to Road 2002, while in France a company named J-Lu managed to launch the World Youth manga. Also, most of these translations respected the original Japanese names, being possibly the first step to standardize the original names, although some editions like the French one, they call the manga Oliver y Tom Captain Tsubasa, using both names for the series. When the 2018 anime was announced, a lot of media and social media pages covered the news, but some of these news were notified as a supposed version that was based on the 2018 World Cup, where, for example, players like Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi would appear. Nowadays, it is pretty evident that this was a fake news to grab people's attention because it was known that from the very beginning this version was supposed to be a remake. But sadly, some people believed in this fake news and got disappointed that the new series will be another remake. To be honest, Captain Tsubasa doesn't have a lot of plot holes, but there are some, like that time in the elementary school arc where we were told that Hyuga's father died a year ago, but later in World Youth it was revealed that he died 3 years before the ES arc, where Hyuga began playing for Meiwa. There's also the time where Soda clearly hits Tsubasa's right foot, but later the injury magically appeared in his left foot, and as a fact, this plot hole was fixed in the 83 anime, putting the injury on the right foot. Or there's the time where in the Germany vs Uruguay match, Pierre says that Schneider finally revealed his fire shot, although he had already used it in the match of Germany vs Canada. And there's also the time in Next Stream where Wakashimasu says that, unlike Hyuga, he managed to win against Tsubasa, although that doesn't make sense because Hyuga already beat him in the first match of Nankatsu vs Meiwa. This is a theory that says that some numbers that are picked in Captain Tsubasa have a special meaning. Such is the case of Natureza that utilizes the number 0, since his Japanese surname is Saka-O, which means King of Football, and the 0 represents the letter O, which means King. Or there's also the case of Hyuga in the Reggiana, where he utilizes the number 78, that supposedly represents the kanji of Fierce Tiger, that seems to have a 7 and an 8. There are also the cases of the sums of the digits that form the representative number, which is based on the player Ivan Zamorano. In Captain Tsubasa, these players are: Tsubasa in Sao Paulo uses 37, 3 plus 7 equals 10. In Barcelona he utilizes the 28, 2 plus 8 equals 10. Misaki in Iwata uses the 38, 3 plus 8 equals 11. And Hyuga in Juventus uses the 18, 1 plus 8 equals 9, etc. Have you ever wondered, what is exactly the disease or condition that Misui has in his heart? We know as the main symptoms angina, temporal vision loss, palpitations, fatigue, etc. Some people suggest that he also has arrhythmia, but we are not so sure about that because we have never been shown that Misui has a pacemaker, which is a device that helps regulate the heart rate of patients that usually have arrhythmias. We can also guide ourselves for various informations, like that time in the 56th chapter of the original manga, where we are told that the muscles of Misui's heart used to be weak compared with the growth of his body's muscle. Because of these symptoms and the improvement of his condition, we are not exactly sure if this condition really exists or not. Some fans thought that he may have left ventricular hypertrophy or also cardiomegaly, although some of these are somewhat contradictory with the characteristics of Misui's disease. There's also an article by the Tech Science Press that focuses on Misui's heart disease, although taking into account that they are basing their research on the 1983 anime that has the filler of Misui having a heart operation. In summary, this article explains that Misui has a diffuse condition called congenital angina. I'll put the article in the description if you wanna read it. Captain Tsubasa is a rather inoffensive series, so it doesn't have that much censorship. Although in some countries they censored in the animes Roberto's suicide attempt or Roberto and Kira drinking alcohol. There's also the 2023 animes where they quote and unquote censored the fight of Tsubasa vs Kanda, given that in the manga it's a bare-fisted fight, but in the anime it was a boxing sparring. They also censored Tsubasa's overhead kick to Kanda, when in the anime the kick misses him and it hits one of the ring's corners. In this same anime it is unknown, but they also removed Muller's characteristic scar, which is kinda weird because Urabe still has his scar on his forehead. And although I'm not 100% sure if this was censored, but it appears so, there's a scene in Captain Tsubasa J where we see the Tachibana twins passing Nepal in a train station, that appears to have been cut in the TV version so that kids don't replicate such the dangerous thing to do, although this scene isn't censored in the DVD versions of the series. For many years, the Captain Tsubasa anime has been in a state that's denominated reboot hell, which is when a product is reimagined multiple times. This is the case in Captain Tsubasa as the original 1983 anime that had their continuation with the Shin OVAs, and later the Honda's Youth movie got rebooted as Captain Tsubasa J, where the story started from scratch. Then later there was the Toro 2002 reboot that started everything from zero again. And later, in 2018, there was yet another reboot beginning from the ES arc. Although for everyone's relief, this denominated reboot hell seems to be ending, because this new Captain Tsubasa series was the first one to receive a second season and continue the story, and some people are expecting a third one. Have you ever wondered, why does the World Youth manga ending feel so rushed? We don't know exactly why, but there are some theories that say that Shueisha decided to cancel the manga ahead of time because of maybe poor popularity that the series had at the moment, or if it was maybe because of some other factors. But they basically decided to make Takahashi hurry and finish the manga as fast as possible. This is why the infamous Japan vs the Netherlands match was reduced to a mere 2 pages. Also, Takahashi explained later that the final against Brazil was supposedly going to be longer, and that much of Tsubasa and Naturesa's duels in the Barcelona vs Real Madrid match were going to be originally in this match. A real shame if you ask me. Trattoria Vere is an Italian restaurant located in Katsushika, Tokyo, the same place where Takahashi grew up and that we have already seen with the statues and the train station with Captain Tsubasa decoration. This restaurant is, in his words, Takahashi's favorite restaurant. Because of this place has a lot of Captain Tsubasa illustrations, including exclusive illustrations created by Takahashi himself, placed or drawn on the walls. The Matsuyama project is a project by the Consadole Sapporo Club initialized in 2017 that seeks developing players from the inferior divisions utilizing the Captain Tsubasa character Hikaru Matsuyama. This project has the official support of Takahashi, where he even draws Matsuyama with their jersey. Also, since the initialization of this project, Matsuyama has become a kind of a second mascot for Consadole Sapporo, selling merchandise and even having the number 36, which is Matsuyama's number in the same club in the manga, reserved exclusively for him. In recent times, it has become quite popular that other mangakas do tributes to others with commemorative drawings for their manga anniversary. Captain Tsubasa is not the exception, having for the 35th anniversary of the series a Schneider drawn by Yugo Kobayashi, author of Aoashi, and as Tsubasa drawn by Motoyuki Tanaka, author of Be Blues. Also for the Shonen Jump 40th anniversary, the artist Yusuke Murata, known for being the artist of One Punch Man and iShield 21, made an illustration of various characters from the magazine, Tsubasa being one of them. And also Takahashi participated in various of these tributes, for example the tribute of Rurouni Kenshin of the infamous Nobuhiro Watsuki, where Takahashi drew the main character Kenshin Himura. There's also this drawing of an OC called Soccer Mask, which is a tribute to the Kinnikuman manga. Everybody knows about the anime remakes of Captain Tsubasa, but not all of them know that there exists a manga reboot of the series that began publishing in 2018, drawn by Toda Kunikazu, called Kiss Dream, which is the same name of the elementary school arc that covers said arc. There's also a sequel to this manga called Boy's Dream that is currently publishing, and it narrates the middle school arc. This manga also publishes in video form like you are seeing on screen. Have you ever noticed that some of the characters in the 2018 anime have a specific color for their spikes? For example, Tsubasa has them blue, Misaki has them cyan, Hyuga has them red, Schneider at Hamburg had them white but later had them gold, Diaz had them orange, etc. A really cool detail, but sadly in the second season most of these characters, including Misaki, have them with generic black, which was a bit disappointing. There's also the case of Goalkeeper's Gloves, where Genso in the first season had them green and yellow, which is a reference to how he had them in the 83 anime. Gino has them red and white, and Mueller has them yellow and green. The Tecmo video games have their own timeline. In the first game, simply called Captain Tsubasa, it tells the same story of the middle school and junior youth arcs, but with some added matches to the latter, like matches against England, Poland, Portugal, etc. In the second game, called Captain Tsubasa 2 Super Striker, it continues the story of the first game and also the manga, where we see Tsubasa playing for Sao Paulo. This game is divided in 5 parts. The first one where we use Sao Paulo, the second one is a high school tournament where we control Misaki's Nankatsu, the third one is the Japan Cup where we face against clubs and national teams like Hamburg, Roma, Uruguay and Japan. The fourth one are the qualifiers for the World Youth, and the fifth one is the World Youth itself where we face in the finals against Brazil. The third game, called Captain Tsubasa 3 Kaiser Challenge, continues the story of the previous game, where we see various Japanese players playing for various clubs around the globe, where in the first part we control these clubs. Later there's a phase of friendly matches from the Japan team with some national teams, and lastly there's the Universal Junior Cup, where we face against various national teams until we reach the final against Germany. The fourth game, called Captain Tsubasa 4 Professional Rivals, has 4 routes. The A route is winning against Vasco da Gama, and then in the Latin American Cup, winning against Mexico with Brazil. This will let us control the Nambu Daidaku of Soda, Nita and Morisaki. Later we will go for the Asian Cup and the World Cup, where we face in the final against the Netherlands. In the B route we have to lose the match of Brazil vs Mexico, which will let us control Sao Paulo in an European tour against clubs of the region. After that you will play the qualifiers and the World Cup itself, where you will face Italy. The C route is unlocked by losing against Vasco da Gama, where you go again in an European tour with Sao Paulo. Later you will play for the Super Japan Cup with the Japan squad of Tsubasa and Nishizaki. After this you will play the World Cup final match against Germany. And lastly there's the D route, which is unlocked by beating Milan in Route C, where we keep playing the Brazilian League, where we afterwards go to play a Club World Cup with Sao Paulo, where you play in the final against Japan. The last game of the series is Captain Tsubasa 5 Asia no Shogo Campione, which argument is Nita playing for Sao Paulo, Tsubasa playing the Italian League with Lecce, then Asian Cup, World Cup, where in the final we face Anita's Campione. This game has a total of 10 complementary scenarios, Some of these are, for example, Hyuga playing in Juventus, Napoleon playing for Nankatsu, Gino Hernandez playing for FC Con, etc. If you had been paying attention, you'll know that some of this timeline is pretty similar to the manga that was released later on, but we will talk about that later. This is basically a critique of Takahashi's way of drawing characters, especially art that was made from World Youth onwards, where he gets criticized for drawing the characters with big bodies, long legs, and tiny heads. In Japan, these big proportions have become somewhat of a meme, even being referenced in Gintama anime, where they do an illusion of the way Takahashi draws humans with such big bodies. There exist a lot of official original characters. For example, in the 1983 anime there's Steve from England or Hefner from Germany. But many of these OCs come from the video games, such as the case of the Tecmo ones that have characters like Arthur Coimbra, Strato, Michael, Elite Twins, Babington, etc. In the video game Captain Tsubasa J Get Into Tomorrow there are the characters from the Street Team. Also, in the video game Captain Tsubasa Rise of New Champions, there are the Americans Blake, Aswan and Ortiz, the ones from Senegal called Sencor and Diallo, and even a goalkeeper for Brazil replacing Salinas called Keisinho. And there's also the now forgotten OCs from Captain Tsubasa Dream Team of the Juvenile Champions that were replaced for Next Dream, that have characters like Jos Hidalgo, Alfredo Di Piazzolla, Fernando Gardel, etc. There's also the now closed video game Captain Tsubasa Zero, that includes female characters that play alongside masculine ones, which is something that never have happened in the Captain Tsubasa game. There have been various voice actors throughout the whole franchise, in animes and video games. Because the animes don't advance in the plot that much, some characters don't have a fixed role. And so, in the video games, these are voiced by actors that eventually will or still do the voices or get replaced or even voice other characters. Such is the case of the second season of the 2018 anime, where the majority of the actors are from the Rise of New Champions video game. As to the cases of an actor giving voice from one character to another, we have the case of the BA of Santana from the video game Captain Tsubasa Dream Team, where he does the voice of Sano and Taki from the 2018 series. Also, in this same series there's a narrator that was originally the voice of Wakashimasu. Or even the case of the BA of Kenzo in the World 2002 and 2018 anime, that in Dream Team he voices Salinas. Throughout the years, the manga had many surveys, mostly for picking the reader's favorite characters. For example, there's one in the special manga of the 25th anniversary where, to the surprise of many, the 6 most favorites are Schneider with 2,452 votes, Misaki with 1,776 votes, Kenzo with 1,626 votes, Hyuga with 1,408 votes, Mitsugi with 1,387 votes, and Tsubasa with 1,385 votes. There's also various surveys about the best match of the franchise, where many pick Nankatsu vs Toho, or the best couple, where the majority picks Tsubasa and Sanae. As we have already seen with Naturesa's nickname being the King of Football or Hyuga's nickname being First Tiger, there's various nicknames for characters like Schneider being the Young Emperor, Diaz being the Genius, Tsubasa being the Soccer no Moshigo, which means Heaven-sent Child of Soccer, Misaki and Pierre being known as the Artists of the Field, Mueller being the Phantom Keeper, Soda and Xiao being known as the Ace Killers, Santana being the Football Cyborg, etc. Captain Tsubasa 3109 Nichi Senkiroku is a special book released in the year 2003 that contains a lot of data of all the characters, matches and other things. This book stands up for having various information about the characters, like their full names, date of birth, type of blood, stature, weight, dominant leg, and a graph that measures the players by the following parameters: technique, mentality, agility, physique, imagination, and tactics. There's also info about all of the matches up to that point, including formations and highlighted moments. A very interesting book. They should release one more up to date. Have you ever heard of the video game franchise of Touhou? You know, that indie shoot 'em up known for being a bullet hell? Well, there exists a fan game based on the Tecmo Captain Tsubasa video games, with the same mechanics, but with characters and history of Touhou. Many of the special shots in this game are truly insane. For example, there's this character that flies up to the moon, writes her name, cuts the moon in half and then hits the ball. There's also a lot of remixes of not only music from Touhou, but also themes from the Tecmo Captain Tsubasa games. For example, this. A very weird crossover, but a really good one if you ask me. According to an interview from the author of Hunter x Hunter and Yu Yu Hakusho, Yoshihiro Togashi, the record of most named characters in the history of the Shonen Jump belongs to the Captain Tsubasa manga, where there are approximately over 240 named characters. Captain Tsubasa 2 Remake is a project being made by the developer Gaston Oliva, which tries to redo all of the Famicom video game of Captain Tsubasa 2 Super Striker, but with more modern and stylized graphics that seem straight out of the anime, more specifically the Shin OVAs, and also a more modern sound direction, where they include voices for the special techniques, a very cool project that deserves our support as a community. This is basically a joke in the Captain Tsubasa community, because if you paid attention reading all of the manga, the majority of tragic moments in the series are caused by car accidents. For example, the death of Hyuga's dad or Stein Clyboard, or when Misaki gets hit by a truck trying to save his stepsister. The origin of the word truck gun is from a trope from isekai anime, where the majority of characters are run over by a truck, which they denominated Truck Gun, where they later are transported into a fantasy world. Everybody knows the case of Ryoma Hino, who has Japanese ancestry but decides to play for Uruguay, which is his natal country. But not everybody knows that, canonically, Wakabayashi is always being told that he could get the German citizenship and play for Germany. I think that he always refuses, which is ironic, because in the World Youth manga, we see him playing for Germany against the Netherlands. This generated various theories of players like Tsubasa or Aoi playing for Brazil and Italy respectively. Marty Friedman, the famous American guitarist that was part of the Megadeth band, who also now resides in Japan, has been involved in various animes for things like openings and endings of various series. One of these is the 2018 anime of Captain Tsubasa, which second ending has parts where a guitar is being played by the one and only Marty Friedman. Captain Tsubasa Stats is a page dedicated to recompile stats from all of the games and players from the manga to this very day, including information like the ones presented in the book but updated. and even information like fouls, apparitions, playtime, goals, assists, blocks, red or yellow cards, own goals, injuries, etc. They also include information from some Captain Tsubasa games like Rise of New Champions, a very arduous but very interesting job. Shinji and Nicolito are two legends of the Captain Tsubasa community. To summarize, Nicolito is the one that gets the raw pages of the manga in high quality, and Shinji is the one who translates it into English, with the best translation possible. As you probably already know, Captain Tsubasa is not very popular in English-speaking countries, and also the manga from World Youth onward have copyright problems that prevent them from releasing to the West. And to this we add that the anime don't advance all that much in the story. So the work that they put is amazing, scanning and translating all of the manga from the very beginning to the possible ending with really high quality. Also, a lot of translations from various languages are based on the English ones by Shinji. So basically, if it weren't for these two, the Captain Tsubasa community would be pretty much dead. So can we get a thank you Shinji and Nicolito in the comments? Similar to the previous case, Saizen is a group of fansubbers that recompiled and translated a lot of the classic Captain Tsubasa animes to English with a very good quality. Also they did translate shows like the Hungry Heart anime. Their contribution is much appreciated, finally having the animes with English subtitles. Although there's one thing, they didn't translate the beginning of the Captain Tsubasa J anime. With that I mean they only translated the World Youth part. Nevertheless, their work and other fansubbers' work is admirable. Everybody knows that the Captain Tsubasa J anime has a very abrupt ending, finishing in the middle of the Asian qualifiers for the World Youth. The problem is that we don't know why it was cancelled. A lot of people argued that it could be due to low rating, which some theorized that maybe the audience didn't like the idea of a reboot of the series, and that's why they skipped 2 arcs to adapt the World Youth, which was the latest manga, and maybe that could bring more people to watch. Others theorized that it could be for the poor popularity that the franchise had at the moment, which would correlate with the World Youth manga cancellation. Or some argued that they reached the manga and they couldn't continue, but the truth is that we don't know why it was cancelled. This is basically a resource that Takahashi utilizes to nerf certain characters by injuries, leaving them weak or unable to play. The most well-known case of this is Genso Wakabayashi, given that during the manga he has a lot of injuries that leaves him unable to play or not giving his all. Another example would be Schneider and Mueller in World Youth. So as to not complicate his life, Takahashi decided to injure them so that it would be easier that they would get eliminated from the tournament by the teams that the script wanted to highlight. This is referred to the fact that in a lot of translations of Captain Tsubasa J, they refer to the Raiju shot as the Dragon shot.
Va más allá del tigre. Es mi... ¡Tiro del dragón!
Which is curious because the Dragon shot is a technique of Ryoma Hino. Every Captain Tsubasa fan had thought of how well the best 11 of Japan or the best international 11 will be. Well, Takahashi has given us the answer, and that will be, for Japan is a 4-4-2 formation where the goalkeeper is Genso, the defense is Soda, Jito, Mitsugi and Ishizaki, the middle fielders are Misaki, Tsubasa, Matsuyama and Aoi, and the forwards are Hyuga and Wakashimasu. The international team will be a 3-4-3 formation where the goalkeeper is, surprisingly, Espadas, the defenses are Xiao, Gentile and Karts, the middle fielders are Diaz, Mikael, Ribau and Clybourne, and the forwards will be Levin, Schneider and Natureza. Although there are some special mangas that have Japan facing an international all-star team that has other formations, but I won't talk about them because the video will be very long. Since it took a while to upload the video, I wanted to leave some extras. The first one is extending a little bit of the multiple names entry from the previous video, because I forgot about some interesting ones. The first one is that in a manga panel where Clivord or Clifford appears, Takahashi writes his name as Cryford. A similar case is Mikael, where in Japanese his name is phonetically Mikaeru, but Takahashi writes it as Miguel in some Spanish magazines where said characters appear. Another case I wanted to add is that in the Road 2002 anime, some characters got their name changed probably to not have problems with real life players, such as the case of Fonseca being called Clemente or Davy being called Willem. This refers to the fact that, at least in the 1983 anime, due to licensing issues, a lot of translations changed the opening themes for one of their own. For example, there's the mythical theme of Supercampeones of the Latin American version.
Supercampeones llegaron ya para triunfar, muchos goles van a anotar.
In the European version, a lot of them had an intro that has the same melody as another changed opening from Lupin III, as you can hear right now. Later, at least in the Latin American version, the opening of Moete Hero was finally translated, although with different instruments. This also happens nowadays, where the 2018 series opening was changed for a completely original one for some reason. This opening was adapted to match the visuals of the first opening, but they recycled the song for the second opening that doesn't synchronize with the visuals, which was a little bit disappointing. There are various plays throughout the manga that in the real world would be considered illegal, such is the case of Wakashimasu and the Tachibanas using the goalposts to boost themselves, or that time where Genso uses his hat to save a shot that was changed in the 2023 anime and Road 2002. There are also some plays that will be considered offside, like that time where Tsubasa lets Hyuga hit him with the Ryu shot in front of Spadas, making some sort of pass to Hyuga, and we don't see any defenders nearby to enable Tsubasa. Or there is the classic play of Diaz scoring against Genso with his hand. And even, the Skylab Hurricane is actually banned in Japanese school competitions due to kids trying to replicate it. This is a theory that explains that the reason that the Captain Tsubasa manga, from World Youth onwards, doesn't release to the West is because FIFA decided to ban its commercialization outside of Japan because of the brands and clubs that appear without their respective permission. Some even theorize that this could also be the reason that the Captain Tsubasa animes don't advance in the story that much, although this will make sense since various video games that contain said story and characters have been released to the West, though with different names. This theory is backed up by the fact that the publishers that released the World Youth manga in France and Italy, and even Shueisha, had various complications that led to the prohibition of the manga outside of Japan. Well, maybe it's not exactly prohibited, as for example the Argentinian publisher of the original manga, Ibrea, said that Shueisha wanted to avoid this kind of problem regarding the trademarks that was supposedly imposed by FIFA when World Youth released in Italy and France. If this is actually true, it will be sort of hypocritical from FIFA, because they prohibit the manga but then later exhibit in their museum and do interviews or documentaries about the manga. But coming from one of the most corrupt organizations in the world, it is no surprise. Although it is a little strange that the original manga is supposedly fine, even though it also utilizes certain clubs and associations without their permission. so this topic is kind of a headache to understand. This is basically a theory that says that Takahashi recycled or even stole some of the story elements from the games and movies. This theory is backed up by the fact that a lot of things that happen in the movies and games are very similar to things that happen later on in the manga, and since we don't know how much influence did Takahashi have in these pieces of media, some will argue that he stole them. An example of this is the filler of the 1983 anime with Pierre and Schneider. Later the movie and games have Carlos Santana, where, in the game, he appears to play a final with Brazil, and in the movie, a South American selection, both led by Roberto. Even in the games, there is a player that appears in the middle of the match. In the game is Arthur Coimbra, while in the manga is Natureza. In the games, we see things like Hyuga playing for Juventus, Matsuyama playing in England, Tsubasa playing in a second-tier team. In the games it's Lecce, while in the manga is Barcelona B. Some even suggest a parallel between the player from the Tecmo games Michael with Mikael, not only in the name, but also the religious insinuation, where Michael, for example, has the Holy Cross shot, and Mikael, it's self-explanatory. This is a theory that says that the next Dream arc is not canon, which, for those who don't know, is a supposed continuation of the manga in the form of a graphic novel included in the video game Captain Tsubasa Dream Team, in which they narrate the Champions League arc. This is due to many factors. One of them is the fact that the information about the canonicity of this arc was kinda vague to begin with. It's because of this that some people say it's not canon. Nowadays, this theory gains more credibility by the fact that, in current interviews of Takahashi, he explicitly says that he wants to do his own version of the Champions League, or that Next Dream is the base for the Champions League arc he wants to draw. Because of this, one will think that the Next Dream we know is a beta version of said arc, which in other words, it will mean that Next Dream is not exactly canon. This, in turn, generated various conspiracies, such as a theory that says that Takahashi gave a non-canon story to Kill Up, that said company will advertise it as such, or that maybe, due to regret, Takahashi let Kill Up do some changes in the story, and that will be the reason why there's some inconsistencies in the story or things that doesn't sound like Takahashi wrote it. As you can already tell, this is the fact that Yoichi Takahashi was once married to the original voice actress of Tsubasa Ozora, Akeri Hibino, or also known as Yoko Gai. We don't know details of their private life, but apparently they divorced around 2014. There exists a light novel that's lost media called Captain Tsubasa Dreams Come True. In this novel, apparently, we see Tsubasa debuting in the J-League instead of doing it in Brazil with Sao Paulo, like the manga. Also, in the synopsis, we see Santana, which apparently isn't like his manga counterpart, and has a shot named the Tersar shot. The only things that survive about this are some promotional images. There exists a very curious doujin that mixes the Captain Tsubasa franchise with Dragon Ball. For those who don't know, a doujin is a manga created by fans of a specific manga. This doujin is called Captain Goku, and it narrates the same story of Captain Tsubasa but with Dragon Ball characters, where for example Goku is Tsubasa, everybody in Toho are Namekians except for Gohan who replaces Sawada, Ten Shinhan is Wakabayashi, Trunks is Misaki, Vegeta is Nita, Android 17 is Misugi, Yamcha is Matsuyama, everybody in Hirado are Frieza soldiers, where Ginyu is Jito, etc. A rather curious crossover. I'll put in the comments a video briefly explaining it. It's very common that Captain Tsubasa had collaborations with things football or sport related, such as clubs, leagues, sporting drinks, football video games, etc. But there exist some weird collaborations. For example, this image of Tsubasa with Optimus Prime from the Transformers franchise, drawn by Yoichi Takahashi. But one of the most curious ones is a video game in association with Japan Racing Association, for some kind of game where Tsubasa and company ride some horses. This game has some bizarre cinematics such as the Tachibana doing a Skylab Hurricane to a horse and such. This is more than a theory, it's a fact, because Takahashi is a big fan of sports in general, so he includes players with characteristics from other sports or disciplines. There are various examples like Kenzo learning boxing, Punaka and his Muay Thai, the Thailand brothers with the Sepak Takraw, the Mexicans with their Lucha Libre football, Furukawa and Kasami with their futsal, and possibly the most emblematic of all, Wakashimasu and Nita with their Wakado Ryu style karate. That, as a fact, the Wakado Ryu, not to be confused with Wado Ryu, is a discipline exclusive to the manga. That means it doesn't exist in real life. This is a theory that explains that each member of the Real Japan 7 or Real Japan 11 is set to replace a member of All Japan, including some that didn't get cut, maybe because the members of Real Japan 11 got cut to 7. These are Yumikura, ignoring the fact that he says to be a replacement of Tsubasa, he will fit as Misaki's replacement, Ino will replace Hyuga, Sakaki will replace Jito, Okano will replace Nita, and Sugimoto will replace Soda. There's a problem, and that is that, for example, the Tachibana twins don't get a replacement, and we don't know which member will Urabe replace. So, taking into account that the original team was of 11 players and not 7, then this will be the futsal combi replace the Tachibanas, Urabe could replace Ishizaki, Igawa, since he's an all-rounder player, could replace Misugi, who also has been seen change positions, Soga will replace Matsuyama, and last, Yamada could be the replacement of Wakashimasu, but since Ken left the All Japan team, they decided not to count him. Do you remember the fiasco of NFTs? For those who don't know, NFT is an acronym for non-fungible token, and it's a type of digital property that throughout a blockchain, it determines that an object is unique and irreplaceable. There exists an official Captain Tsubasa game developed by a QLab subsidiary that utilizes NFT mechanics, but we are not gonna talk about that today. Well, there once existed a company that did sell Captain Tsubasa NFTs illegally. Why illegal? Well, an external company sold these guys the supposed rights of the manga to license these NFTs, but that company that sold them said rights actually didn't have them. So they basically scammed them, and shortly after, the actual company that holds the rights of Captain Tsubasa sued them. So they decided to cancel all about this project. This is basically a curiosity of the 1983 anime. In this anime, as I already mentioned in a previous video, there exists a filler in which Tsubasa met Sanae and some guys of Nankatsu before it actually occurred on the manga. Since they didn't know Sanae's name yet, they decided to call her Miyuki Namiki in the credits. The Captain Tsubasa animes are known to have a really good soundtrack, but there's a slight problem. That is, that not all of these songs were released to the public, with maybe the exception of Road 2002. The 1983 anime has some missing here and there. In Shin they only released 4 songs, in J they only released 6 songs to the public, and in the 2018 anime they directly didn't release any of them. A lot of people, using audio software, try to take the scenes in which there appears to be an unreleased track, and throughout effects, remove the voices and sound effects directly from the series, leaving only the music, but the quality of these are not perfect. There's a case I want to mention, and that there's a YouTuber called Sun Unleashed who not only does the already mentioned, but he also reconstructs the melody with his own instruments, staying as loyal as possible to the source material, which is really good in my opinion, and the quality is incredible. During the course of the manga throughout the Shonen Jump magazine, it was common that some pages were in color. The problem is that when the manga released in physical format, these pages were printed out with the typical grayscale. During the period of Road 2002 to La Liga, Takahashi stopped doing many color pages when the manga was in the Young Jump magazine, but in Rising Sun, due to the change of magazine to Grand Jump, we could finally see some new color pages made by Takahashi. There exist some images scanned directly from the Shonen Jump magazine that are in color, but there aren't many. Here are some comparisons. There are some characters that share the same name. For example, in Italy Junior Youth, there's a character named Gentile, and then in World Youth we see Salvatore Gentile, which is a different character. The same goes for a keeper named Galtoni in the Argentina Junior Youth, that later in Rising Sun will be replaced by another character also named Galtoni that is over 23 years old and plays in the Argentinian League. There are also various Japanese players that share names, such as the case of Aoi and Takasui, who both share the name Shingo. Have you ever noticed that since the end of World Youth onwards, Tsubasa never does his skydive or skywind shot? We don't know why, but in the case of the skydive shot, a lot of people will consider it a foul. Because of this, maybe Takahashi decided to never use this shot ever again. But the case of the skywind shot is more curious, mainly because it is never mentioned again beyond the World Youth manga. In fact, in Rising Sun, where we see techniques similar to the skywind shot, like the Galvan Cannon, Tiger Brand's Raichu shot, the Tornado Arrow Raichu shot of Mikael, or even the Full Metal Phantom, they always mention Hyuga's Raichu shot, but never the Skywind shot, which is kinda similar. The All Japan team of Captain Tsubasa has a lot of players from various regions of Japan, like Tokyo, Hokkaido, Saitama, Kyushu, Osaka, Shizuoka, etc. But we see various players like Misugi, Matsuyama, Hyuga, Shito, Soda, and Genso respectively. The thing is that in Captain Tsubasa there's a lot of representation from a lot of places in Japan, but one of the players who we don't know who exactly where he's from is, surprisingly, Isaki, that, due to moving out constantly because of his father's work, we don't know exactly in what part of Japan he was born. This generated various theories to explain his natural prefecture. The most well known is that he's from Yokohama, maybe because in the manga Boku wa Misaki Taro we see that his mother resides there, so people think that there is his place of origin. There exist various hacks or modifications of various Captain Tsubasa video games, such as the old ones from Tecmo or even the more recent ones from Bandai Namco. The great majority of these mods are translations, since a lot of these games never left Japan, but there are some hacks that try to change the story, animations, characters of the game from the ones to the manga, like the amazing Captain Tsubasa 2 hacks. In recent times, there are also people that modified the game of Captain Tsubasa Rise of New Champions, which, for example, they add characters from the manga that are not in the game, like the mod Captain Tsubasa World Cup Showdown, or even a mod adding characters from other football series like Blue Lock. A really cool job if you ask me. We have seen cases like the death of Hyuga's father, that in the ES arc we know that it was 1 year prior, but in World Youth they mentioned that it was 3 years prior. The thing is that there are some timeline inconsistencies in certain details. For example, in Rising Sun we see characters with intelligent phones and tablets, which, in the time that the manga is supposed to be transcurring, which will be the 90s, this didn't exist, although some will argue that the technology in Captain Tsubasa is more advanced than in the real life at that period. Also in the 2018 anime they decide to modernize everything, which later on will bring up some issues. Like in the Junior Youth arc, in the match against France, Mikami does 3 changes in total, saying that he couldn't do more, but at the time that the anime was released, player changes were changed from 3 to 5. Also in the same anime we see that Soda gets expelled for having 2 yellows, which by modern rules would mean that he couldn't play the final. But they kinda fixed this by saying that they protested the yellow and decided to remove it. Also another thing is that in the animated World Youth there's a slight problem with Germany, since when the original manga was written, Germany was split in West and East Germany, but later in World Youth we are shown that Germany is reunified. Because of this, there will be new members and Germany will be stronger. This in the anime could be a little bit weird. This is basically a theory that the infamous Danish duo of Haas and Christensen, for their behavior with the flight attendees, just when they arrive to Japan, could be involved in controversies for being possible sex offenders, which for a manga like Captain Tsubasa will be tremendous. It is no surprise that according to some people, certain characters have a lot of potential to be more interesting or a better player in the story. For many, these characters are Santana, Pascal, Yumikura, the Futsal Combi, the Tachibanas, Soda, etc. But one of the cases that resonates the most is Misugi, who, according to many people, would actually be the best player of Japan if not for his heart disease. But there's also another one that I would like to bring up, and that is Nita. The ability of Nita to not only run fast, but also his quick learning makes him a character with a lot of potential. An example of this is in the Tecmo games, where he gains more protagonism, or rather antagonism, since he decides to betray Japan and join the Campione team that we face in the final. Have you ever noticed that in the video games of Captain Tsubasa Tsukuro Dream Team and the Takai Dream Team, both developed by Killab, they never release units from Australia or Greece? Which is weird because in some trailers and cutscenes from the game, we see these characters appear, although they don't give them much screen time. This generates some kind of conspiracy that, at least for the Australians, Killab won't consider them for beating Japan in the World 23 arc, which will be really petty if I'm being honest. As for the Greeks, we don't know exactly why they didn't get the units. In recent interviews from Takahashi, he mentions in various occasions that the ending of the middle school arc could have been different. Well, the ending would have been Nankatsu beating Toho, but since he felt a little bad about Hyuga, he decided to end it as a tie, which, at least as I investigated, this tie thing is not a practice that actually happens in the Japanese school tournaments, but is rather something original from the manga. Also, I investigated something at last minute, and that is the fact that originally, the ES arc, Roberto would have actually taken Tsubasa to Brazil, but was changed because of the popularity of characters like Hyuga and others. Tsubasa Plus was an augmented reality mobile game similar to Pokemon Go, launched in the year 2020, and cancelled not too short after because of the coronavirus pandemic of the same year. It is unknown how exactly this game was played due to the short time of operation, which is a real shame because it seemed to be really ambitious, but given the global circumstances it went unnoticed. In Japan, it is very common that a manga or anime has some sort of official theatrical adaptation. Captain Tsubasa is no exception, having an adaptation called Super Experience Stage Captain Tsubasa that had a total of 23 functions from August 18th to September 3rd of 2017. The synopsis is the following. After Japan got crowned as the champion of the Junior World Tournament, years later a special sub-20 club was formed called the Red Storm, in which they include various international players, some well-known like Schneider, Müller or Pierre, and some new ones like Abeleon or Neol Polo. And they are coached by Roberto Hongo and they face a sub-20 Japan. At the end of the show the score is 3-4 in favor of Japan. We know about many works that were inspired by Captain Tsubasa, like Inazuma 11 or Shaolin Soccer, but there are some whose plot and drawing style are very similar to Captain Tsubasa. An example of this is a series of Gambare Kickers, which plot is that a kid that moves into a new town joins a pretty bad football team, but with him the team gets better and they face the Red Devils, who have a genius goalkeeper that seems unbeatable. Basically, at least in the beginning, it is very similar to Captain Tsubasa, not only in the plot, but also in the style. Even so, this series evolves more than that, and has a more comic and slice-of-life appeal than Captain Tsubasa. Another example will be Moero Top Striker, whose plot goes that there's a kid that's considered a prodigy and decides to go to Italy to play football, where he meets an ex-player from the English selection, who decides to train him and inscribes him to a bad team so that he could make it better. As you can tell, there's a lot of similarities, but at the same time this series decides to have something more original with a plot more centered about romance. In summary, it is very impressive the cultural impact of Captain Tsubasa, so that there could be works inspired by it. In the movie of Captain Tsubasa Ayaoshi Sennippon Jr., we see Hyuga training in some snowy place to develop a new shot. The thing is that later in the movie, when Hyuga enters the field in the second half, he decides to use his new shot called the Eagle Shot, which has the same name as Matsuyama's shot, but in reality the effect is different, as this one has a vertical spin, like Tsubasa's drive shot, which makes it real curious. It is worth noting out that Matsuyama's Eagle Shot was named in the Junior Youth arc in the manga, which was released after the movie, so it is possible that Takahashi was inspired by the name of this shot to name Matsu's Eagle Shot. The video game of Captain Tsubasa for the Famicom was the only Tecmo game that left Japan, although in a different way. Well, due to the fact that at least in the United States, the Captain Tsubasa franchise practically didn't really exist, so they decided to change the graphics, names, and story to completely new ones that could be more attractive to American public. This game was called Tecmo Cup. The story is as follows. Robin Phil, who replaces Tsubasa as a protagonist, tries to become a better player than his father. As you can tell, they changed the names of the players. For example, Hyuga is Damon Stark, Misaki is Cecil Phil, which will be Robin Phil's brother, Kenzo is Lucas Wilder, etc. Obviously, they also changed the names of all of the teams from the middle school arc for one of their own. And curiously, they also changed the countries in the junior youth phase. For example, England becomes Japan, Poland becomes Argentina, Argentina becomes Arabia, France becomes Germany, and Germany becomes Brazil, to give some examples. Also, they had some changes in the music, as the original version had licensed themes like Moe the Hero for Nankatsu and Japan, that were replaced by the following. Probably due to low sale of this game in the West, this story was not continued, although for the Sega Genesis there existed a prototype also called Tecmo Cup, which is very similar to the Captain Tsubasa 3 video game for the Super Famicom, but this game was apparently cancelled, maybe due to the fact that Sega was entering a crisis and decided to cancel a lot of those games that they had planned. Since yet again I took a lot of time to upload the video, here are some extras. This is a theory that says that Arthur Coimbra, the Brazilian football player that appears in the Tecmo games, was planned to appear in the Captain Tsubasa Tsukuru Dream Team game. This is backed up by some images that prove this theory. but since this game was closed down in 2017 and was exclusively on a Japanese website, we don't know if this exactly was real or not, although many claim that the image is clearly edited. I didn't put this in the iceberg because I don't know how true this is, since I don't know Japanese, but well. This is basically the fact that supposedly the number 283 can be pronounced very similar to the word Tsubasa, where 2 is 2, 8 is Ba, and 3 is San, which spelling it will be similar to the word Tsubasa. This is why in various events the Tsubasa Day is celebrated the 28th of March, which will be 28 of 3. This is a hilarious Spanish parody fansub for the Shin Captain Tsubasa anime made by the YouTuber Chisazo in 2011, in which they utilize a lot of idioms, insults, and typical Argentinian phrases with the scenes of the series. If you want to watch them, I will leave them in the comments, although it is in Spanish. There are two things that are in the files of some Captain Tsubasa Tecmo games. One of these is an image of Roberto that seems to be of a profile of a playable character, which will mean that this character was planned to be playable, maybe as a flashback where we see him play for Sao Paulo. And the other is an unknown song that's in Captain Tsubasa 4 that you can listen now. Captain Tsubasa 3rd The Shunen Kinen The Best Soccer Songs Kekito Samurai Blue is a recuperatory commemorative album with songs that are football related, launched in the year 2010 that has Captain Tsubasa thematic. There's really nothing to talk about and I can't put the songs because of copyright, but if you wish to listen I can leave you a link to the Captain Tsubasa wiki that has all of the songs from the album. The Tsubasa Cup is a sub-12 cup celebrated annually on Katsushika, Tokyo since 2017, where they invite various sub-20 clubs and football schools to dispute a tournament with a Captain Tsubasa thematic. This cup has participation of even the Japanese subsidiaries of various clubs from Europe and South America, for example Barcelona, Inter Milan, and even Boca Juniors. Also, they have exhibition matches where the various Japanese players participate in a match between Nakatsu and Meiwa. The winners of this tournament do not receive a monetary prize, but rather an acknowledgement for participating in this cup, which is merely for exhibition. During the first few chapters of the Captain Tsubasa manga, it appears that it wasn't very popular for the Japanese audience, and due to the bottom 5 system of the weekly Shonen Jump, the series was on the verge of cancellation. But everything changed when Roberto did his famous overhead kick, where the popularity of Captain Tsubasa exploded after seeing such accuracy. So we have to thank Roberto for technically saving the manga. This is a fun fact from the Latin American dub of Captain Tsubasa J, where, for some reason, the majority of the characters that appear after the elementary school arc have their original Japanese names. For example, Jito in the 1983 anime was called Victor Clifford, but in J, they call him Hiroshi Jito. This also applies to the characters that appear later on like Aoi Shingo, whose translated name is Rob or Terry Denton. The thing is that now that we understand that they used the original names, for some reason in one scene there seems to be an error where they call Soda Makao Hayata, as you can hear now.
Tomisaki, Steve Kyuga, Masao Koryoto y Kazuo Koryoto, Makao Hayata, Hiroshi Jito, Ishunita.
This is a theory that says that, due to Levin's strict and scientifically based training in preparation for the World Youth, it could be possible that he used doping so that he could develop his famous flaming shot. Hiroyuki Okita was a Japanese actor and singer, better known for being the singer of the opening of the first Captain Tsubasa anime, Moete Hero. The reason that he's in this iceberg is that sadly, Hiroyuki Okita took his own life in 1999, which was a surprise for many, since he didn't seem to have any suicidal tendencies. A real shame since he was a contributor of such an iconic song like Moete Hero. The only thing that we could say is that he may rest in peace. Everybody knows that England is a very important nation for football, being the place where its modern rules were designed. The thing is that it seems that Takahashi doesn't treat his English characters or even the nation itself very well. In the Junior Youth arc, we see that they have an advantage against France until Napoleon enters, which even Robson, England's captain and most important character, can't stop. Or even in Road 2002 and Next Ring, we can barely see the participation of English clubs, which makes this theory that Takahashi has some sort of stigma against England more believable, although we don't know why this is the case. We know that in the manga of Captain Tsubasa, the majority of the characters are pretty good people, but there are some characters that could be considered racist. The most well-known example is from various Italians like Gentile and Matteo, that seem to hate Japanese players, calling them monkeys that only know how to juggle the ball. The curious thing is that this display of racism could also be kinda racist from Takahashi, where he labels Italians as racist, at least against the Japanese. Also, in the Latin American dub of the 1983 anime, an English character called Steven calls the Japanese players amarillitos, which will translate as yellow skin in a despective form, which is tremendous considering that in the original version he never says something like that.
Lo siento por ustedes, amarillitos, que hayan hecho tan largo viaje para nada.
Have you ever noticed that some elements of previous arcs are pretty similar or even the same in later arcs? Well, according to some fans, Takahashi is part of a practice called autoplagiarism, which concept is that when an author reutilizes elements from the same work. The most well-known autoplagiarism act of Takahashi is the Junior Youth arc, where it has a lot of elements from the Kid's Dream arc. For example, a goalkeeper appears that says that they are the best goalkeeper in the tournament, but ends up being the third. In the ES arc, it's Nakanishi who gets overshadowed by Genso and Ken. In Junior Youth, it's Gino who gets overshadowed by Genso and Mueller. And talking about goalkeepers, in the ES arc, a mysterious goalkeeper appears in the middle of a semi-final to catch a penalty, this being Wakashimasu. In the Junior Youth arc, Mueller appears, but instead of a penalty, he catches a free kick without a barrier, which is technically similar to a penalty but with more distance. Then the goal that Misaki and Tsubasa score against Gino, being a bunch of passes, is pretty similar to the goal that they score against Wakabayashi in ES. A semi-final in the rain. In the ES arc is against Musashi, in Junior Youth is against France. Also, Pierre utilizes the offside trap like Misugi does in the match of Nankatsu vs Musashi. Or even the fact that Genso doesn't participate at the beginning of the tournament but appears to play in the final match, among some other things. Some even suggest autoplagiarism from the Tecmo games that we have talked about before in the video, obviously taking into account that if he ever wrote them or not. This is something that happened in an event in Hokkaido, where some people went with the intention of going a Ken and Schneider doujin, and they nearly died because of the insanely low temperatures and accumulated snow. Zipagunner is a YouTube channel that focuses on doing parodies of video game music, where they change the melodies or do mashups from one song to another, utilizing the same instruments and everything. Well, this channel has a song parody of the Captain Tsubasa 2 Super Striker theme of the Rio Top, where they changed the instruments for the song Maniac by Michel Zembello, as you can hear right now. There exist various things that could be considered lost media related to Captain Tsubasa, both officially or not. An example of this would be some sort of special children educational programs. In one of these, they inform children about the precautions that we have to take when crossing the street, and the other one, they teach some techniques to extinguish fire. Another case of lost media would be the English Captain Tsubasa dubs that were made in Malaysia. These are partially found, in where they changed the names of the characters for others. For example, Tsubasa is called Bash and Genso is called Flash. There are also some other cases of lost media like the light novel about Tsubasa playing in J-League that we talked previously, or even some illegal comics and video games that we're going to talk about later in the iceberg. Takahashi's Trip to Europe is a one-shot special about Captain Tsubasa centered in the one and only Yoichi Takahashi, where they utilize real-life images as panels. The story goes that Takahashi receives a letter from Genso inviting him to travel to Europe. First he arrives at Paris, where he encounters Misaki, and later go to West Germany to see Wakabayashi, who invites them to see a Bundesliga match with two teams where real-life Japanese players that play in Europe played, those being Yasuhiro Okudera and Kazuo Osaki. After the match, they talk with Okudera and then Takahashi goes back to Japan. The video game Captain Tsubasa Tsukuro Dream Team, the predecessor of Tatakae Dream Team for mobile, had a great issue due to the fact that there was a market where people exchanged players with one another, which doesn't sound like a bad idea, but many of these people decided to charge real-life money for these players in a type of black market that made a lot of legal trouble to club. It's because of this that this exchanging mechanic that a lot of people want in Tatakae Dream Team actually isn't. Also, I would like to tell you some interesting facts about this game, like for example, a lot of the music in the game was remixed in the sequel, like you can hear right now. And also there are some weird things, like for example Cryford, due to the fact that the Japan vs Netherlands match of the World Youth was never shown, and the game launched during the beginning of Rising Sun, they decided to create original techniques from him, for example the Crescent Moonshot. Also this same character originally they had him with brown hair, when Takahashi drew him blonde, they decided to do him blonde as well. Xiao Junyuan, the prodigious Chinese player, plays football exclusively too. In his words, summon dragons with his countershot that are apparently only visible to him. The thing is, having these kind of visions that are not real could be a sign of schizophrenia or some undiagnosed mental illness from Xiao. Or maybe it is real that dragons come out of a Hando Shu Sokujin-ho. This entry is about, let's say, the evangelizations of Tsubasa to other characters' character, where meeting him changes their whole life. Practically almost every rival that Tsubasa has played against are affected after playing against him, like for example Wakabayashi, Hyuga, Mitsugi, Diaz, Santana, Natureza, Mikael, etc. Also some suggest that one of these evangelizations is the one that happens to Sanae, who used to be pretty tomboyish but due to her love for Tsubasa becomes more submissive. Due to being a pretty popular franchise of the Shonen Jump magazine, Captain Tsubasa has a lot of cameos in the covers of the magazine to celebrate various events, where he appears alongside Goku, Seiya, Giorno, and other famous characters from the magazine. It also has cameos from various video games related to the magazine. An example of this is the video game Jump Ultimate Stars, where Tsubasa, Misaki, Genso, and Hyuga appear as assists. Also, in the RPG game Famicom Jump Heroes Ratsuden, we see Tsubasa as a playable character, where he fights enemies from other mangas, including Captain Tsubasa, where the main enemy is Gino Hernandez. This is a theory that explains that, if not for his retinal detachment, Roberto could have played alongside Ribaul and Radunga in a Brazilian selection that would be pretty broken if you ask me. Also, it will be really curious to see Ribaul play with his idol, who is Roberto. This is basically an urban legend that says that the Spanish opening of Captain Tsubasa, or also known as Oliver y Benji in Spain, has a supposed hidden message while putting the song in reverse, which makes some phrases sound like it says "Que viva Hitler," which will translate as "Long live Hitler," like you can hear right now.
Oliver, Benji, los magos del balón. Benji, Oliver, sueños de campeón. Benji, Oliver, el fútbol es su pasión. I sapmy se rozrówne, Verwila i dnie, no jednak jedzeniusz. Verwila i dnie, no rable co ramsel, i dnie, Verwila.
Tremendous, don't you think? Although it's pretty obvious that this is a coincidence. This is a very curious detail about the Road 2002 anime. In this anime we see that Tsubasa goes to Barcelona, and in the matches that he plays there, we can see some Spanish flags that are pretty peculiar. As you can see in the picture, the flag utilizes some sort of eagle instead of the typical coat of arms of Spain that we normally see nowadays. Well, the thing is that the flag that they are utilizing in the anime is the one corresponding to the Spanish dictatorship of Francisco Franco, which will make some think that in the Road 2002 anime, Spain is still under that regime or under the right. Or maybe some fans are fascist. The most probable thing is that some Japanese guy that worked in the anime put a random Spanish flag without thinking too much about it, but it does generate some uncertainty. Being a popular series, it's obvious that Captain Tsubasa will have various doujins, and some include yaoi. For those who don't know, yaoi is a genre of manga where it focuses on male romantic relations with one another. It's something pretty normal in the majority of communities, so we don't need to be too surprised. There are various mangas where they narrate romantic relations between various characters, like Tsubasa and Misaki, Genso and Schneider, Hyuga and Matsuyama, Hyuga and Wakashimasu, among others. There are even Captain Tsubasa doujins made by the famous artist group Clamp, that have a whole business with these types of stories. The reason that it's so below in the iceberg is that some of these doujins are very suggestive in both themes and art, and some even utilizing the elementary school arc characters, which ends up being kinda weird. I wonder if Takahashi knows about these things, and that's because in the Rising Sun manga, we see that Genso makes a bet with Schneider in which if Schneider wins, he joins Bayern, but if he loses, he will have to dance doing the pen pineapple apple pen completely naked, which is pretty suspicious knowing that they are both single. It always intrigued me the cancellation of the World Youth manga that we talked previously in the iceberg. It seems that one of the problems is that it wasn't pretty popular in Japan at that moment, so one would think that the Japanese didn't like World Youth, which is interesting knowing that outside of it, it seems to be considered one of the best Captain Tsubasa mangas. Well, it seems that the Japanese didn't think so as well, and the continuations of the manga had moderate success. Why did this happen? At least as I could investigate, people didn't really like the arc of Tsubasa in Brazil, saying that they expected more than one match. Also, the Japanese have some sort of stigma regarding the way Takahashi draws characters, with big bodies, long legs, and small heads, which makes the characters look like titans. Well, a lot of the public really criticizes Takahashi's anatomy, so much that the author of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Hirohiko Araki, came out to defend Takahashi, saying that the style is pretty unique and the deformation of the anatomy gives a really dynamic result, which, as a fan of both franchises, this is really tremendous. There are some inconsistencies regarding the clubs in which Wakashimasu and Misui play. Well, we know that in the epilogue of World Youth, Wakashimasu plays for Yokohama Flugels. Well, since this club technically disappeared, Takahashi decided to put him in Nagoya Grampus. As for Misugi, since his club, Belmer Hiratsuka, relegated to 2nd Division, Takahashi decided to put him in Tokyo FC, where they even made a special event where he appears with their jersey on the stadium screen. There exists a special manga that apparently was made to promote a project by the clothing brand Sof, in which they made football-related gloves for a fictitious club called FC Real Bristol. Well, one of the projects that were created with this branding is a concept for a stadium designed with energy efficiency and ecological care. Takahashi participated in this project creating a promotional manga for this hypothetical stadium. Well, this manga is called FRCB Stadium Opening, and it tells the story of a team with Tsubasa as captain and a team with Hyuga as captain, where they play a match in said stadium. We see Hyuga do a goal and the manga ends. Yes, it is that short. It's only 10 pages long. Have you ever noticed that in the English-speaking anime and manga community, they always omit Captain Tsubasa? Treating it like an obscure series just because it's not popular in Anglo-Saxon countries, while in the rest of the world it is pretty well known. Why does this happen? Well, let's go in parts. First, the first 4 Captain Tsubasa anime never had an official English dub. Well, they had, but those are the lost media dubs made in Malaysia for Southeast Asia, meaning that they were never meant for the United States or England. Second, and this is a personal supposition, but the fact that Captain Tsubasa anime had its name changed not only the series but also the characters in practically all dubs made that, at least for various years, made the series technically more obscure. Let me explain myself. Changing the names of the series and characters for unique ones makes the community divide between, for example, the Europeans where it's called Oliver and Benji, the Latin Americans where it's Supercampeones, Middle Eastern countries where it's called Captain Masjid, or even the Japanese community where it's just Captain Tsubasa. This makes the discussion for the series be completely different in each community. For example, if I tell an Arab that I like Oliver Atom, they aren't going to understand who I'm talking about, because they know him as Majid, making the community feel divided. This translates to the English-speaking internet, since it's the internet's main language, and there's no unified way to refer to the series and characters unlike animes like Dragon Ball, which makes the series look pretty obscure, since a lot of fans that are bilingual, they refer to the series and characters a different way. This is getting resolved thanks to the fact that at the late 2000s they began to slowly utilize their real names for everything, and also Shinji's manga translation also helps. But even so, some people really think that Captain Tsubasa is obscure. This situation is pretty similar to what happened with Saint Seiya, but at least the company who holds the rights of Captain Tsubasa in English-speaking countries, Viz Media, seems to want to impulse the series a lot, which is pretty good if you ask me. Setsuai 1989 is a yaoi manga created by the author Minami Osaki, which plot goes about the relationship between a rock musician and a prodigious football player. What does this have to do with Captain Tsubasa? Well, this famous yaoi manga originated as a spin-off of a doujin called Dokusen-yoku, which plot goes about the yaoi relationship between the Captain Tsubasa characters Kojiro Hyuga and Ken Wakashimasu. The Captain Tsubasa Dream Team rap is a pretty obscure ad for the video game. There's not much to say, but if you want to hear it, I'll put it now.
You seem kinda bored. I'll tell you about a game if you download. You get to explore a new world full of excitement, the game called Captain Tsubasa Dream Team. Pretty easy to rock and roll. Dribble, pass, or shoot, stay focused. Pick your next move, prove that you're here to win, not to lose. Like balls and drills and notebooks. Gather all the items you need to evolve your team, make your winning dream come true. Hurry up, download.
Takahashi tends to include supernatural things in the Captain Tsubasa world, like some techniques like the handle Shusoku Jinho or kickback cannon that apparently summons dragons that only Xiao can see, or even the fortune teller that Kumi attends to, that predicts various things that happen in World Youth. Though the majority of these supernatural things are religious, especially with Mikael. For example, the resurrection of Misugi or the fact that Mikael can see Sanae's soul after an accident. This is a fun fact of the manga, where we can see various characters reading the Captain Tsubasa manga. For example, there's Urabe in elementary school saying that Captain Tsubasa is really funny, and later in Road 2002 we see Ban Saul reading what appears to be volume 5 of the Captain Tsubasa original manga. This is a detail that always stuck with me. Practically almost all European players have blonde hair, even the characters that don't appear so because of the thing I explained in a previous video about the canonical hair colors. That summing it up is an interpretation problem due to the grayscaling in the manga. There exists some official Captain Tsubasa comics called Oliver y Benji created by the publisher Multilibro exclusively for Spain. To be honest, there's not much information about this comic or how much loyal it is to the anime. We can judge by the covers that it seems to narrate the elementary school and middle school arc, but at least, how I investigated it, there doesn't appear to be much scans from this comic. The only thing for certain is that the drawings are, well, without needing to insult, pretty bad. This is a problem that apparently YouTube has about Captain Tsubasa. Well, many YouTubers that specialize in the manga or anime seem to have visibility problems or simply their videos taken down due to copyright infringement. This is pretty stupid from Shueisha's part, because these videos help promote the series, but apparently they don't think that way. Even so, we can't even seem to find some openings or endings from the series, because they get immediately flagged. Similar to the case of the Spanish comics, in Mexico some comics were created called Los Supercampeones del Fútbol, made by the publisher Toucan, based on the 1983 series and J. Unlike the previous comic, this one has more information about its plot, which is pretty loyal until a certain point, but this series is technically lost media, because there are only the covers and some panels on the internet, so the full story is for now unknown. But we know some details like Roberto being in love with Professor Root, or even a love triangle between Sanae, Tsubasa and Hyuga. Now, this comic was cancelled because Shueisha decided to sue the publisher due to copyright infringements. That's why they are illegal. The original plan of the publisher was to narrate the story of Captain Tsubasa 1983 up to Captain Tsubasa J, but since we already have talked, it's been cancelled. Boy Soccer Team 5 is a ROM hack of the Tecmo video game of Captain Tsubasa 5. This mode tries to translate the game to English, but it does it in a pretty hilarious way. This ROM hack got popular due to the streamer called Bart Skeletor, or also known as Vinesauce Joel, that played it in a section called Super Nintendo Madness, where he plays random Super Nintendo games, and one of them was this ROM hack. This has some pretty weird and choppy dialogue, and some characters' names are changed, like Nita is called Nick and Roberto was simply called Robert. Have you ever seen images like this? The drawing is really great, but sadly the artist practically disappeared from the internet. This is a phenomenon that I've been seeing a lot in the artist Captain Tsubasa community, where an artist draws like 2 or 3 drawings and then completely vanish. But one of the most well-known ones is this Japanese animator that did some really great animations, but this artist not only disappeared from the internet but also deleted all of their videos, only having a few uploaded, which is a real shame because at least from my opinion, these videos were great, but whatever. All phones before the era of the smartphone were very primitive as far as games were concerned, but there were some, the majority developed in Java. Captain Tsubasa has a couple of games made in Java for old phones, although the majority are lost media. One of these games that were found not too long ago was one set in the Golden 23 arc, that as far as I could tell, the gameplay is very similar to the Tecmo games. As I said, the majority of these games are lost media and the only things surviving about them are some screenshots. Definitely, the phrase of "the ball is your friend" is the most emblematic phrase of Captain Tsubasa. But is the ball really your friend? We know that for Roberto, this phrase means being with the ball 24/7 and taking it everywhere, but the meaning of this phrase has been changing throughout time. Is being friends with an inanimate object some sort of delirious thoughts from Tsubasa? Well, I don't really know, but it's curious that Tsubasa has a lot of his friends' corpses in his house. As we have seen throughout the Iceberg, Takahashi created a lot of works aside from Captain Tsubasa. In this case we're going to be talking about the manga Shukyuden Fil no Okami Striker Jin, or simply known as Striker Jin. This manga was serialized in the weekly Shonen Jump and the plot goes about Jin, a mischievous kid that loses his family in a car accident and decides to follow the dream of his dead brother of creating a football team capable of winning the national tournament. The thing is that in one of the manga's episodes, the entire Captain Tsubasa Golden Generation appears. Although sorry if I can't bring any context as this manga barely has any scans, but whatever. The point is that it appears that these two series occur in the same universe. This is a theory that says that Takahashi seems to not like Matsuyama that much, and always leaves him kinda behind. This theory exists by the fact that Matsuyama doesn't have a lot of prominent plays from Junior Youth onward. For example, in World Youth he doesn't have that many contributions, and also he was absent in the match against Sweden, and later is sent to the J-League. But here comes the curious part, and that is that in Next Dream, Takahashi sends him to Arsenal, an English club. The thing is that as we have seen previously on the Iceberg, Takahashi seems to have some sort of stigma against England, and it's curious how he sends him there, and even Yoshiko declined his marriage proposal to become a flight attendant, which generated various memes in the community. Although this theory went a little wrong by the fact that Matsuyama's Arsenal beat Diaz and Ino's Napoli, which was pretty shocking. Also, this theory is kinda curious by the fact that Matsuyama was named after a Japanese singer called Chiharu Matsuyama, who Takahashi is so much of a fan that he included the lyrics of one of his songs in the manga when Tsubasa goes to Brazil, which, for those who don't know, this song is called Sora Tsubasa wo Hirogete. During the manga, we are shown things like miracles, strange apparitions, and other religious stuff related to Mikael. But are these things that happen in the manga, like angels and spirits, real in the Captain Tsubasa universe? In the En La Liga manga, we are shown that Mikael appears in front of Natureza in the middle of the Real Madrid vs Barcelona match, and Natureza calls him God. Could it be that in the universe of Captain Tsubasa, Mikael is really God in the body of a human, or even the second coming of Christ? Everything is possible. This is a really recent thing, and that is that the exponential improvement of artificial intelligence is tremendous in various topics, and the one we are going to talk about is artificial intelligence in art. Let's put aside the infinite discussions about the morality of the use of AI in art, but Takahashi has said in recent interviews that there's a possibility of letting an AI, quote-unquote, draw the rest of the manga instead of the sketches that we have nowadays. If I'm being honest, Takahashi really should look up for a successor, similar to the case of Toriyama who worked with Toyotaro in the manga of Dragon Ball Super. And the thing is that this successor technically exists. We already talked before in the Iceberg about the fact that there's a manga reboot drawn by another person. Although many may not like his style, as a personal opinion, I would prefer Toda Kunikazu to be the successor of Takahashi and continue the manga instead of relying on an AI. This is a discussion that says that Rising Sun may never end. To be honest, Rising Sun, despite the fact that it's published weekly, has a very slow pacing, and as to the date of this video, we are still in the penalty shootout of Spain vs Japan. As a personal opinion, it really worries me that something could happen to Takahashi and could not finish his work, not even the arc that we are currently in. The only thing we can do is pray that nothing happens to him. The legend of the Lobison is a South American legend that says that the seventh consecutive male child of a family transforms into a sanguinary beast in the form of a werewolf during the full moon nights of Tuesday and Fridays. What does this have to do with Diaz? Well, as we are told in the manga, Juan Diaz is part of a big family. Now we have to do some speculations, and that is that if we don't count Diaz's parents, and also we suppose that the little girl is the youngest in the family, that will make Diaz the seventh male consecutive child. In other words, and according to the legend, that will make Diaz a Lobison. Who knows, maybe this thing of being a genius in football is due to the supernatural powers of the Lobison. Everybody knows that during the manga we are always shown that Tsubasa wins almost all of his matches, and we can count with a single hand those with dice. Have you ever thought, why is it like this? This is a supposition that I have, and that is that Tsubasa, for Takahashi and many Japanese fans, represents the hope of Japan in becoming a football superpower winning the World Cup, and that is why Tsubasa is not allowed to lose, because if he does, the hope disappears. Another supposition is that maybe during the match of Nankatsu vs Meiwa, showing Tsubasa lose made the Japanese fans mad, and that maybe due to pressure, Takahashi always shows him winning in almost every match, and maybe the ones who he loses are off screen. There exist 4 secret scenes in the video game Captain Tsubasa 2 Super Striker. One of these happens if you input a secret code. In this scene, we see Tsubasa arriving at Sao Paulo and having a conversation with Roberto about the main rivals team, Flamengo FC, where Santana plays. The other 2 scenes, at least how I investigated, happen at random after winning the Rio Cup or the High School Cup. In one of these scenes, everything is normal until a character from another Tecmo video game called Mighty Bomb Jack appears, and the commentator talks about this. Later, Mighty Bomb Jack retires. In the other scene, everything is the same, but this time Mighty Bomb Jack stands on the commentator's head, and he does a hilarious commentary as usual. And the last one happens during the final match of Japan vs Brazil, where Schneider appears to talk to Tsubasa and leaves him a phone number, which Tsubasa says he'll call later. The thing is that this number is or was from Tecmo, in which they will give you tips about the games they develop. I'll put the scenes in the comments. That's right, this is a theory that says that Tsubasa will lose the World Cup, though it may sound a little bit unsatisfactory after all these years, but in this theory Tsubasa will lose the World Cup maybe to incentivize the Japanese to win it in real life. Captain Tsubasa Neto Special is a special magazine made by the weekly Shonen Jump, dedicated entirely to Captain Tsubasa. It includes things like info of the players, anime, voice actors, posters, and even 3D pages. This magazine stands out for having 4 mangas. The first one is the pilot, the second one is the Boku wa Misakitaro one-shot, the third one is Takahashi's trip to Europe that we saw earlier, and the fourth is a special where Tsubasa debuts in Brazil, that also has some other players playing professionally. These are Misaki in Bordeaux in the French League and Wakabayashi in Hamburg in Bundesliga. The curious thing about this special is that everything ends up being a dream. Captain Tsubasa J strangely never reached France officially, which made the fans do their own subs for the series, in which Aoi Shingo, since they were utilizing the names of the dub, with that I mean Oliver Atom and Mark Lenders, the fansubers decided to give him the name of Cedric Panegos. Later, in Road 2002, they named Aoi officially Nicolas Alliot. That's right, this is a theory that says that Captain Tsubasa is nothing more but a project from the Japanese Football Association to make football more popular in their country. This thing of a group of people controlling a literary work where they select an author as the face of the work, in this case Yoichi Takahashi, is a really popular conspiracy theory. We need to know that at the time that the manga published, Japan didn't even have a professional football league, and never even classified for the World Cup, which will make that this project called Captain Tsubasa could incentivize younger players to practice football. Although this theory is kinda curious because practically as a side effect, they also inspire great football players throughout the world, some even world champions. In any case, I think I don't even have to explain that this is a crackpot theory. And that's the Captain Tsubasa Iceberg. Hope you enjoyed it. I would like to do some special thanks to Nita News for inspiring me to create this iceberg, Lecoinde Tsubasa for the original French Captain Tsubasa Iceberg, and Captain Tsubasa Perfect Shots for helping out in general. This is Shinplug from Captain Tsubasa Central, and goodbye.